Welcome to the Across the Bar podcast, where we talk about why today's headlines are important for you and your success at work. My name is Peter Rahbar, and I should be your first call on legal issues.
And I'm Laura Brounstein, and I should be your first call on anything to do with comms and content. Hi, Peter. How are you?
How you doing, Laura? We're not in Davos, but it's freaking freezing in New York.
Yeah, it's colder in New York
2 feet
than
of
it
snow
is in
or something.
Davos.
Is it?
Yes. Well, not today, but earlier this week, Monday and Tuesday, it was 100% colder here. When
Wow.
I was talking to a friend that was there, they said, "Oh, it's like 30 degrees here." I'm like, "It's like 15 here." So,
Well, soon we're going to get like...
interestingly, this is always, because as you know, I usually go, this is always, I feel like, the coldest week of the year.
Really? So it's all downhill from here? Yeah, or uphill temperature-wise from here?
I think so. I think it usually like goes frigid in January, like second or third week.
Okay.
I'm excited
Well,
for the snow again this weekend. Are you?
Yeah, let's see. Let's get a lot of it. Let's go.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Big snow.
Let's go skiing.
Are you going skiing?
Hopefully soon.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about
All
today?
right.
Is there anything to talk about?
Slow news week. So we are going to talk about, obviously at some point we will hit on some of the things going on in Davos, especially our thankfully foiled attempt to take over Greenland. It seems foiled, at least. But we're going to talk about what the heck is going on with a general counsel from Goldman Sachs and why it was she seemingly besties with Jeffrey Epstein.
Besties.
Peter says there's a college football thing we need to talk about. We're going to talk about how many strikes are happening in New York right now. Very interesting, given our new mayor and many things about the environment. And then this is super interesting. People want to have more transparency in AI hiring tools. And there is a challenge to the way they currently work. And then speaking of that, some of our favorite AI bosses say that AI is going to cause a blue collar boom, employment boom. And we'll talk about whether we think that's true. Right, you ready? What's up?
Yeah, it's a big list.
What's
it's a big list.
Goldman Sachs person and Epstein.
Well, it's not just a Goldman Sachs person. This story has been percolating for a little bit, and it's really now like boiling, I guess. The general counsel of Goldman Sachs, who was hired just a few years ago, named Kathryn Ruemmler, through the release of the Epstein files, has been revealed as you said, a bestie of Jeffrey Epstein, allegedly. I mean, it seems like it.
Meaning the email, we saw evidence of texts and emails going back years in very heavy traffic, right? Would you say?
Right. And so there's an issue now amongst Goldman partners. And there's been stories over the past few months amongst employees too, about, was her level of interaction with Epstein, disclosed while they were hiring her, and what are they going to do about it now that, it's become so public? And it seems like it's more than anyone ever knew. I mean, it was not just legal representation. It was chats about
everything,
finding apartments and vacations and how people looked and other things. I mean, there were hundreds of emails, and
they were
as you know,
chatty besties.
Yeah, and as you know, we haven't even seen, the majority of these files, so there could be a lot more.
Do they just think people are going to forget?
Yeah, I mean, people definitely have short attention spans, but if you're a general counsel of any company, but let's say one of the largest banks in the world and a public company, you have to have, just like a perfect record of integrity and ethics. And this casts a huge shadow.
Some of this seems a little specious to me. Like, how many bad guys must Goldman Sachs do banking for? I would imagine there's some really bad guys that they are doing business with. This seems a little... I'm not like, everyone should be allowed to help pedophiles. That is not my point here. But
that's not what we're endorsing here.
No, that's not my message. But I also think this seems like a little bit of a silly, specious moment that everyone's clutching their pearls about it, when I'm sure if we looked at some of the, arms dealers and even worse things that
Well,
Goldman is working with. Like,
it's
I don't know.
it's not just a Goldman issue, although this one is a Goldman issue.
Yeah.
I mean, J.P. Morgan has had, or is having a lot of problems over their ties to Epstein and funding of Epstein and certain bankers there who funded him over the years, even after he was convicted. I think the difference here, and some of those people have lost their jobs and some haven't. And by the way, a lot of major male executives at different companies have lost their jobs over their ties to Jeffrey Epstein. I think the difference here is, and why there were rumors this week that she may be on the way out because of this, is that she's the general counsel. And general GCs are held to a different,
But when they hired her,
measure
she
of conduct.
disclosed that she advised him.
We don't know what she disclosed.
No, we
first of
saw
all,
some paperwork, I thought.
But the optics here of what's come out are just
not good.
Are really not good.
Like, I'm sure there's a morality clause that this falls under, but I still think it's interesting that I'm sure also there are other people that they're doing business with that are just as bad or worse.
Of course. But again, we're talking about the general counsel, who's ultimately the last stop for enforcement of all policies, all conduct-related policies, etc.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to be in that position and hold someone else to account for their conduct when you're someone who's known to be associating with Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, there was a story in November where she sent out an email admonishing employees about what they put in writing, and what they put in writing and how you communicate reflects on you and the firm. And
wait, that is priceless.
Wait, you're telling us this?
Wait, that is absolutely priceless.
Well, that's part of being a general counsel. You send out messages like that, and you want people to take them seriously. How could people take them seriously in this case?
That's insane.
So that's why the debate's happening. How it turns out.
Why isn't it privileged communication?
Why isn't what privileged communication?
Why aren't her messages to Jeffrey Epstein privileged?
Some of them are, but a lot of them were not in the context of providing legal advice. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that people don't understand about attorney-client privilege.
No, I feel that I tell you every secret because you can't tell anybody.
Well, if you're telling me a secret for the purpose of obtaining legal advice,
it always is that. Let me say that ahead.
You can mark it as attorney-client privilege. It will be considered attorney-client privilege. But if we're having a conversation about finding apartments and you're just having that conversation with a lawyer, that's not privileged. There's nothing privileged about that. I
actually didn't know that.
Yeah. So a lot of people mark emails attorney-client privilege that definitely aren't. And so we have to have this conversation with them.
Interesting. Okay.
And there are
What
certain
do you think?
things.
Do you think she's going to get let go?
Look, I think she has to. I mean, I just can't see. I wonder what's in the next wave. There must be something that they're seeing.
There's got to be
road.
something big that they are, because they're dragging their feet so much. Like, there is something that they are, I think, actively dragging their feet because they don't really want us to see.
Yeah. I would think she's probably on the way out, and they're trying to find a graceful way to do that and a settlement, etc. But I don't know, and we'll see.
Interesting.
Crazier things have happened, obviously.
Yes.
But it's very hard to be in a role like that with that kind of background. That's just fun.
And it's very hard to, this is a gender double standard, but to look at a woman who liked being in with such a predator, it's hard to not be like, what was happening for you there? Like, why was this,
yeah, it's a great question.
Was this, like, the thing for you? And I guess the one to grow on that for everyone else is what we always tell people. If you don't want people to see it, don't put it in writing. And there's also, if you are in a high profile position, there's something to be said for having a practice of just always erasing your emails or texts every week. Because if it's a regular practice, you're not culpable for anything.
You're really getting good at this stuff, Laura. I mean, that is another piece of advice I give a lot of clients and a lot of companies have rules about.
Hearst had like an automatic dump rule.
Automatic delete.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on a personal level, it should be done all the time. Like you should regularly delete emails and texts. I don't care how cool you think it is to be able to call up a text that I sent you in
Wait, you haven't
October of
framed my
2021.
texts?
What?
You haven't like framed all of my texts?
Oh, yeah. No, yours are in like a very special place, of course. But like, I have people who send me texts from years ago, and I'm like, why do you still have that? Delete it. You shouldn't have all that stuff on your phone. Delete it. Delete your emails. Delete your texts, like just as a regular practice.
It's a good reminder. I am not good about doing that, and that is a good reminder.
Yes.
Speaking of, I am cleaning some things out, and I just threw out my 2011 tax returns. That was okay, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. How long are you supposed to keep that kind of thing?
Some people say 7-8 years. I don't know. Something like that.
Okay, but anything before, I don't know.
2011,
Before
you're
2020
good.
seems.
You're good.
Okay.
Plus the IRS, who knows what they're even doing.
Yeah. Okay, next, what is this football thing that you're all worked up about?
So you have to pretend to be interested about sports for a few minutes, okay?
Okay, I'm ready.
This is a big case. This is a big deal. College sports are very popular.
I've heard that. I've heard
the
that.
college football championship.
Hey, what happened to that guy what happened to that guy we talked about like a month or so ago that was like a big college coach and got arrested? Something crazy with the woman.
Oh, the Michigan coach. Yeah.
Yeah, what happened to him?
He's awaiting trial.
Oh,
he got fired and he's awaiting trial. Okay. Very ugly case. But Monday night was the college football championship. Indiana won. I don't know if you know that. Very unexpected. Formerly like the worst team in college football. Won the national championship.
I didn't know that.
Congratulations to my good friends Mike Hayes, Julia Haddon, all the Indiana fans who were really excited. But this week also the other big college football news was that Duke, which is my alma mater, sued its quarterback who was threatening to transfer to Miami for basically a breach of contract, and this is a big case.
Has that ever happened before? That is interesting. All right, I'll give you that. It's interesting.
Okay, see, I got you. Yeah. Little hook.
Do they sign a contract like that? A binding contract?
That's a great question, Laura, because college sports has totally transformed over the past couple of years.
Right? Did I get that right? Name and not LIC.
NIL.
I was close.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Name, image, and likeness. And
right.
And those rights to sell your name, image, likeness, that has generated tremendous paydays for famous college athletes. And for this Duke quarterback, he entered into a contract last year, a 2-year contract with Duke to license his rights, and was paid approximately $8 million is the rumor. And then he breached the contract.
Oh, wait, so he sold his name and likeness rights to the school he was going to.
He licensed it to Duke.
It for the period of time he was there.
For a series of payments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, he has a written contract, and there are provisions that he would need to follow if he wanted to enter the transfer portal, which is the pool of players available for schools to sign.
Essentially,
there's a portal. And he breached the provisions, the notice provisions, and even doing the act itself within 2 years. And Duke sued him. And basically Duke said that he should not be allowed to enter the portal. And there are provisions in the contract that must be followed. And,
wow.
And so that case, they tried to...
done that before.
Well, there was a threat of it happening a couple weeks ago with a player, I believe at somewhere out west, a school out west. But this is new because the rules keep changing, and the reality is there's no rules. And college sports are different than pro sports
like
because
international relations at the moment. Sorry, I'll put a pin in that.
Yeah, so college sports are different than pro sports because pro sports have leagues, they have commissioners, they have rules, they have unions, okay? And most importantly, they have antitrust exemptions that allow them to do all these things. College sports don't have that. Players have been suing for years to break up the college structure. They've succeeded, and now there is no structure. And colleges thought that the president and Ted Cruz, who's the chair of the Senate committee that oversees this, would help them get some sort of limited exemption so that they could make rules. And guess what? That hasn't materialized.
One thing about Ted Cruz is he can only be relied on to get out of town when the weather's bad.
Yeah, he's in Mexico, I think. Yeah. And so now we have this like wild, wild west with athletes. And the only thing really that's holding them to schools are contracts. And just like they would for anyone else. And so Duke should win this case. I've read the contract.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't mean they could force him to play for Duke. They can't force him to play for Duke, but they could certainly keep him from playing from another school.
And he
unless
just
there's
thought
a
he would make
negotiated
more
outcome.
money going to the other school.
Yeah, and part of the contract was he wasn't supposed to reveal the details of his contract, but curiously, on the day when he was indicating his interest to transfer, all the details were out there. So it's a big case. We're going to continue to follow it. What?
Do we think he leaked the details of his contract?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, okay.
He definitely shared it with another school.
Why was that? Oh, he shared it with another school.
Yeah, and it was pretty clear. The rumor was that he was going to Miami. He's also represented by a lawyer who teaches at Miami.
Oh, interesting.
And so the case is pending in court. So far, they've gotten a limited TRO to keep him from enrolling at any other school. And we'll see how it plays out. But
TRO
I can't
is
see a
temporary
court.
restraining order, everyone.
Yeah. I can't see a court ignoring a contract like this. It's a valid, binding contract. He's an adult when he signed it. He was represented by lawyers.
Was he over
agents.
18 when he signed it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we'll see how it plays out. I know you'll be on the edge of your seat waiting.
Well, no, I get. This is interesting. I get that. This is very.
Yeah, I mean it's a contract just like any other contract, and looking at it, people in the media, sports media, are so lazy. And the initial reporting on this just came just from his lawyer, who's giving them a totally inaccurate story. But they're portraying it as if there's some structure in place, or that college athletes should.
There's
get
no
some
commissioner or anything.
No. The NCAA specifically says we can't make rules. We've been sued into oblivion every time we've tried to make a rule. So
fascinating.
It's an interesting space. We'll see what happens. But this contract should be held up. That's my prediction.
Okay, that is very interesting, and I look forward to seeing, because that's it. It's going to be interesting to see if they do hold it up, and if they don't, why. Yeah. So
I feel like I succeeded there. I got you a little interested in sports.
You sold me on a football story.
That was a victory.
Okay. So, Peter, you have been saying for about 6 months now that we are going to see more and more protest and unrest, especially by employees, as people get more and more freaked out, and as various reasons we've seen why this may be the case. And now we are feeling that in New York City. There's more than one strike going on, right?
Well, there's one strike going on and one strike that's being threatened.
The nurses are currently striking, right?
Yes.
And
nurses are striking.
Nurses were my heroes 2 weeks ago, because nurses keep our healthcare system together with their bare hands, from any experience of mine.
Yeah, and look, the thing that's driving these strikes more than anything is another topic we've talked about a lot, is inequality and the increased cost of living. And living in New York is very expensive, as we know, you and I. And nurses provide very valuable essential services. And, they work at these hospitals that make an insane amount of money, and they want to be paid.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of leverage, frankly. And we've seen nurses out on the picket line with politicians, Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, others.
My vague understanding is it's not even really the hospitals that are pocketing the money. It's the payer. It's the person in between the patient and the hospital. It's the insurance company.
Yeah, well, somebody is, because the whole system is outrageous. Yeah. But, the nurses have a lot of leverage. And so people like nurses, jobs like nurses, you can go out on strike and people will care, and politicians will show up and
I think the more skilled a job is, almost the more it matters. And that's a really skilled one. What's the other one that's about to go into? Oh, the breads one.
Yeah, so the other one's just a crazier situation.
It's
Bread's
such a crazy
Bakery,
story.
If you've been to New
sorry,
York,
Bread's Bakery people, that you're having to deal with this. I mean,
very popular bakery restaurant that claim to fame as the babka, delicious babka, and
really good babka.
Other treats, and they've faced a unionization effort. And although there is some focus on pay and work conditions, the other focus of the union is that they want Breads to stop supporting Israel, stop supporting, quote, a genocide in Gaza, and doing other things like not painting the Israeli flag on cookies, etc. And what's notable here is the bread's founder and owner is Israeli.
Yeah.
So anybody who went to work there should have known that in the
like
first
how
place.
if I opened a business that was, all about cats, let's say, and then a few people that were more dog people started working for me and were like, we got to be all about dogs now. Couldn't I just get the fuck out? There's a cat business.
Yeah, the political version.
I don't
of
understand.
That. And it's completely insane, and it's actually caused the opposite reaction of the nurses' strike, where now people have come out.
Oh
and
my
there are
God! I've
lines
ordered
to
from
buy
Brett's
babka.
Bakery nonstop the last several
It's been
weeks.
a huge boost to their business to
of
support
course.
them, and the key thing here is
especially the one on the Upper West Side. I think there was like a line down the block. After this happened,
right.
Which
The key thing here is it highlights a couple things. I mean, first, you can't achieve political issues through, union negotiations. I mean, it's not something the law could ever order. You can never have an impasse over it. Like, it is a issue that union workers wish you could, force an employer to agree to, but you can't.
Diversity on hiring panels have been covered by union contracts.
Yeah, if an employer wants them to be, but ultimately the board could never order it. Like, that's not something they could ever order. Okay, that's just like a nice thing on the wish list. Now, this, I would say, is not such a nice thing to begin with, and it's not something they could ever achieve through a court order or,
like, no one can tell at this point, at least. No one could say to me, well, your employees all want it to be a dog company, so it has to be, right? Like, if it's my company,
exactly. They can't force you to change.
I'm like, it's a cat company.
Right. The other thing it highlights is a struggle now that exists on the union side and union membership, which is the emerging number of younger people and women in unions and what their sort of wish list is versus what traditional leadership wish list is. And so
that's a great
here
point.
Here the union involved is the United Auto Workers, UAW. They have not commented on the political demands at all.
I mean, UAW is not known for being rapidly progressive. Like, they must be like, what in the actual fuck?
Yeah, and apparently, there was a proposal put forth in the UAW Congress or whatever it was to, withdraw support for Israel or pressure candidates to withdraw support for Israel, and they refused to do it. So, as the numbers of younger workers in unions increase, they think a union is an answer to everything, and once they find out, once they join, they find out it isn't.
Personality.
Yeah, once
yeah.
It's not, unions could say whatever they want to get people to join, but once they join, they're like, wait, what happened to X, Y, and Z? And, they realize it's not something they can really deliver on.
Once media companies started unionizing, a lot of these young, super idealistic, which is beautiful, writers and editors and artists, it became their whole personality. And they thought it could cure everything. Like, everything was the union.
Right.
Which
it's just not, but you should,
The Hearst family was not that enamored with the idea.
If you don't want to work for an employer who supports Israel, then don't work for an Israeli-owned business. I'm sorry. That's just like a very common sense thing. Go get another job. There are other bakeries that don't get
on the same block. There are other bakeries.
Yeah.
It's not like
around the corner.
I've got a specific skill in New York City.
There's a nice Italian bakery right across right around the corner.
Exactly. Maybe you could get a job like in Mamdani's Gracie Mansion or something.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it's insane to me.
It's insane. You know what I haven't seen? Sorry to hit this issue again. Really haven't seen anybody protesting on behalf of the brave Iranians still.
Well, a friend of mine sent me a video. There, a number of protesters have been out in front of the Iranian embassy in London.
Good. Okay.
There's been protests in LA, but it's like totally wiped off the radar screen, and the stories are coming out now of what happened during those few weeks. Potentially tens of thousands of people were murdered, massacred.
Oh my God!
And you don't even read about it or hear about it, and I would assume part of the president's hard pivot to Greenland had something to do with the fact that he, set a quote red line on what type of conduct would trigger his involvement in Iran, and he just ignored it and moved on. And so,
I think you're ascribing a lot of strategy there to say he went hard on Greenland.
Sort of what he does.
So you're saying you think he went hard on Greenland because he realized he failed on Iran?
Just basic pattern recognition.
No, the Greenland thing is, I thought, much more, A, he didn't get the Nobel Prize, B, all the bad guys that he wants to hang out with want NATO to be weakened, and he wants them to think he's cool.
There's been 25 different reasons offered for Greenland, so pick yours.
The craziest.
Go for it.
I don't know if you listened to his speech yesterday at WEF, at World Economic Forum, but the way he kept saying Iceland, and then...
Was that his speech?
Yeah. And then Caroline Leavitt was like, you misheard. I listened to it.
Piece of ice.
He kept saying...
Piece of ice.
No, he kept saying, I'm getting in trouble over Iceland. Can you believe it? I just want
Right, and
Iceland.
She said he was referring to a piece of ice.
Yeah.
In Greenland. Right, of course. We can't, this is a hole we're getting into, but...
Poor Joe Biden said the wrong country one time. Everybody wouldn't shut up about it.
All right.
One of my favorite stories to come out of Davos is Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, of ChatGPT fame, has came out this week and said in an interview that he expects the AI boom to cause a huge rise in blue-collar unemployment. Because of all the people... Employment. I'm so sorry. Cause a huge rise in blue-collar employment because of the number of people they will need to hire to erect data centers. This seems like the most depressing let them eat cardboard thing I've ever heard. Speech, false. That's absurd. B...
Well, it's not false. It is creating a lot of jobs.
But totally different jobs. And I think it's hard to imagine that the number of jobs needed to build those centers will outweigh the number of jobs that get erased because of AI.
Well, some of these tech moguls, and there was an article about it this week, but I've heard it in various different forums. They basically view it as if you're not a creator of if you don't own an AI company, or you're basically going to be just unemployed and part of an underclass. And this is viewed as the last moment to make generational wealth for these people, and they don't really care about what the impact is on workers. So it's very nice to say hey, we're going to employ a lot of blue collar workers, but what he's really saying is those of you who wanted to be lawyers and doctors should really become carpenters.
You're right.
And then you can become people who just live on universal basic income and come into service when we need you.
Always going to need podcasters, though, right?
That's right. But it does highlight, that this area needs a lot of regulation and careful thought. And you have this administration now saying, well, AI generally, and the development and the uses. And there needs to be a lot the impact on our society.
Well, let's bring the related story into this. The new lawsuit that is saying it's unfair, or I don't know exactly what the...
Discriminatory.
It's discriminatory because we don't know what happens inside the black box of the AI algorithm that helps with hiring.
Yeah, there have been a number of cases, and there was one filed this week against a company called Eightfold AI, alleging that AI tools are discriminatory, and that if they're being, in this case in particular, the lawsuit was saying that if you're going to use these tools, companies, then you need to disclose what they're telling you. This company in particular, Eightfold, assembles dossiers on candidates and gives them a rating. And
wow,
what is that based on? I mean, and the lawyers in the case, and I think it's actually a pretty good argument, are saying, well, if you use a credit report, you have to disclose it to a candidate. If you're making a decision based on a credit report, you would have to disclose it. So these AI tools should be subject to the same rules. And I don't think that's a bad argument, and I think that's a reasonable debate to have. But this government is saying, no one can regulate these things except us. And guess what? We're not really interested in regulating it at all. So these things are happening. And we saw
it's like the wild. This can't continue quite the same way.
Right. And there's another set of lawsuits, and this came out in the public last week in a debate about Grok and Grok, basically undressing people and doing all sorts of crazy things, including with children.
Saving us.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
There's more laws in Europe about this kind of thing than there are here.
Yeah. Europe's always been ahead of us in regulating tech.
Why
to
is
the
that?
frustration of tech companies? Well, because they care about careful innovation, and we don't.
Yeah.
We want unrestrained innovation. But you can be sued for instance, there were lawsuits recently, and there was a $4 million jury verdict in California against a company that, and an individual created like a deep fake naked picture of a woman and circulated it around the workplace. That's harassment. Guess what? That's harassment. Yeah. So these tools need to be regulated, and you need to be careful how they use them. It's not an excuse to say, I didn't know AI could do that, or it's just AI, or whatever, or it's a fake image. That's not an excuse.
It is. AI should not be people's excuse for just bad behavior. Obviously, creating fake naked pictures of anyone, much less a coworker, and spreading it, that's bad behavior. That is not 100%. Something you would advise your child to do, right?
Right.
So just because there are tools that aid it now doesn't mean that this is not bad behavior.
Right. And so we've talked a lot about employers having policies. You should absolutely have policies about how AI is used in hiring processes. You should absolutely have AI integrated into your harassment policies. And in cities like New York, there are rules about if you use AI in the hiring process, you have to disclose it to candidates.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Just that you're using them, but you don't have to disclose the results, which is, I'm sure we'll see it soon in New York, frankly.
Interesting. Okay, the last thing, because we've already been talking a while, but I just want to do a quick reminder for people what they do and don't have to do if they are confronted by ICE, because it is everywhere. They are, according to the AP, ICE is now claiming wider rights to search homes without warrants. Is this a thing?
Is it a thing? Yeah, it's a thing. They're trying to expand their authority as much as possible. And
what will the stop on this be?
Well, courts.
Is this something like someone's just going to have to sue them and...
Yeah, and people are suing them every day, basically, because they're trying to push the boundaries of their law, of their, mandate and their scope and what they could do lawfully. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of limits on what ICE should be able to do. And we've talked about this in the workplace context. And you asked that we talk about it again, and I think we should. And so in a workplace context, ICE is allowed to come into public areas of your workplace just like they would be able to, just like any other customer would be able to. The interesting thing is you don't have to talk to them. You don't have to answer any of their questions. In fact, you should train your employees not to talk to them. You should have a point person designated.
Is there like a line you can give them to use rather than just being silent?
Yeah, you could. I mean, if you're an employer, you should have a plan ready to deal with ICE, and
that
part of it is
communicate
designating
out clearly.
Yeah,
so
designating.
They say I decline to engage or something like that.
Right. You could say you could talk to my manager. And
so
a regular employee does not have to talk to ICE.
Let's say I'm a doctor and the door is to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Is my waiting room considered a public place?
Yes.
Okay, let's say I'm at Hearst. The only public place is like the lobby of the main building.
Right. So like in any New York office building, the only public place is the lobby, right? So they could come to the lobby, they could talk to a security guard, they could ask where a company is. The company doesn't have to let them in unless they have a judicial warrant, not an ICE warrant. So these ICE agents show up with warrants that they create themselves, and they say they have a warrant. But if they show you one, you should inspect the warrant, read it, and see if it was issued by a court or whether it says Department of Homeland Security at the time.
And what do you do if it's the latter?
If it's just Department of Homeland Security, you can deny them entry and tell them they need a court-ordered warrant to get in.
Give me the word. So tell me, okay, so ICE shows up at my place of business or my home and says, hi, I would like to come in and look around.
They can.
I say, may I please see the warrant? And then if they say, I don't have a warrant, but don't make this harder on yourself. I'll come back. Don't make this harder on yourself. What do you say?
So I'm not letting you in. I wouldn't let them in. And, I would call your lawyer and say, I'll stand here. I'm going to go call my lawyer right now. And you could do that.
I saw one video where a kid had it seemed like an adult in their life had left them with very clear sentences to say if I showed up.
Right.
That was like, I declined to open the door at this time, or something that was very come back with a warrant.
Yep.
Until then, please leave my home. I don't need to answer you.
Yeah, right. And if you're an employer and they show up and they say, we want this specific employee, you have no obligation to produce that employee for them. If there's an employee
if they
standing
do
in
have a warrant, though, for search or arrest, then you have to comply, correct?
If it's a judicially issued warrant, yes, then you would have to comply with that. But I would still say I need to call my lawyer first and then, go through that. And you should definitely have an immigration lawyer ready to go. You should also have a lawyer who's familiar with, how to deal with law enforcement
and
ready
you should
to go.
Communicate clearly to your staff. And you should not underestimate how nervous people probably are.
Right.
Even if they have nothing to hide. People just get...
And you should absolutely have cameras, recording equipment in public areas to make sure everything's documented.
That seems in New York. What if it's a two-party state?
No, but you could have you could have a sign that says there video recording and occurring here.
So
whatever.
the main things people need to remember: it is going through the courts, whether or not, or will go through the courts, whether or not ICE actually has a wider mandate than our Constitution currently allows for.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to be, no court's going to say they have the right to just storm into someone's house without a warrant.
We
That's
hope.
insane.
We hope. This is insane what's going on.
Obviously.
I mean.
Obviously.
Who's that guy yesterday with the gas that is like chemical warfare in Minnesota?
I don't even know.
Anyway.
It's crazy.
All right,
heroes and zeros. Yeah.
What do you got?
Who's going first? Me?
Yeah.
All right. So my first zero? Okay. It's kind of work related, but not really. My zero, trying to keep it light, which you've asked me to do many times and I fail at.
I haven't. You always say that. I don't think I ever said that to you.
There's a trend, which I've noticed and now read about, that hotels are eliminating bathroom doors from their hotel rooms to save money.
What?
And be more efficient. And I think that's obnoxious and unnecessary. I would never stay
What
at a
hotel is doing that? I would never stay someplace.
Yeah. So hotels, stop doing that.
Stop doing that.
Stop designing it. We
no
don't
one
like
wants
it.
that.
Yeah, no one wants it.
Nobody wants this.
As someone who travels a lot, I was really alarmed.
Gross. Gross.
Yeah. All right. Who's your zero? Top that.
My zero is, God, I don't even have anything light to say. It just, whoever took that little boy out of his home.
Gosh. Yeah.
Liam, I think his name is. What is wrong with people? And they're using people's children as bait.
To get the parents to come out of the house.
Parents.
It's sickening.
This is horrifying.
Yeah.
But also, you know what? I'm going to go with my hero. Fuck yeah,
Please.
Mark Carney.
Oh, you took mine. Oh my God.
We can both
That's such a
talk
great
about
speech.
how cool Mark Carney is. But also,
that's the first time that's happened, by the way.
How fucking sexy did Macron look with those sunglasses on during his speech yesterday?
Oh, the memes were amazing.
Oh.
The Macron memes were top notch. Elite memes.
Mwah.
But Mark Carney, I mean, bravo.
Way to have a Hugh Grant and Love Actually speech. Just sticking it to the U.S., calling out gross things that they were trying
He had a
to
good
do.
look going on. His tie was slightly undone and off center. It was just yeah.
I think
I'm
Pat
give it to
Kiernan
you.
could play him in the movie. Even though Pat Kiernan is not known as an actor, I think when I see him...
News anchor?
Yeah, because he's Canadian.
Oh my God.
Affable.
Yeah.
No?
Okay. Well, shared hero. That's how good the speech was.
Shared hero. Yes, that's how good Mark Carney is.
Yeah. All right.
And I would also like to give a shout out to my 1990s self that saw Wag the Dog and said, we would ever go to war with Canada. Shout out to me for lack of imagination in the 90s.
I'm going to Canada this week, so I hope it doesn't happen while I'm
Oh, that's fun. Where are you going?
Toronto. Great city.
Fun.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Enjoy.
Well,
All right, this was a good conversation. You were very
I
nice.
enjoyed it.
Good job.
And before we leave, I want to wish perhaps our most avid listener, Nick Silvers, a happy 50th birthday, which is today. We are recording on Thursday.
Happy birthday,
happy
Nick
birthday,
Silvers.
Nick.
And Lucy Danziger.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Laura. So thanks everyone for listening or
Thanks,
watching,
Sadie
and we'll
Rahbar.
see you.
And more
Thanks,
next
Sadie.
week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Take care.